Hey everyone, welcome back to Ciko Recap. Today we're diving into Sanctum, 2011, a gripping survival thriller inspired by real events. It follows an elite team of cave explorers on a mission to map one of the deepest, most dangerous cave systems in the world. But when a sudden storm floods the cave, their journey turns into a desperate fight for survival, a brutal reminder of how fragile life can be when nature decides to strike. So stick around, as we break down this intense and unforgettable story. The movie opens at a small harbor in Papua New Guinea. Amid the bustling crowd, a teenager named Josh waits for someone's arrival.
Josh?
Soon, he meets Carl, his father's associate, who introduces his partner, Victoria. Eager to see the exploration site, Victoria urges them to hurry. Without hesitation, Carl, a wealthy businessman, takes them aboard his private helicopter, heading straight to meet Josh's father.
Sala, the mother of all caves.
Not long after, they arrive at a cave region called Sa, where Josh's father, Frank, had already conducted an expedition for 34 days. Inside the cave, Frank instructs all his team members to prepare their diving gear, because he and Judy are about to explore a newly discovered branch of the cave.
I can feel it.
You all set?
Sure.
Emergency tanks. See, they're diving rebreathers, but if something goes wrong, you need backup.
This cave's not gonna beat me.
Upon reaching the camp, a technician named Dex immediately presents the map of Sa cave that, so far, they had managed to chart. This cave is considered the largest and most difficult one, a place no one has ever explored before. Yet Dex is confident his team will become the very first group to conquer its depths. Especially since, according to the belief of the local people, this cave branch is said to eventually lead out to the ocean.
Trying to find its way to the sea.
Wow, that's incredible.
Moving deeper into the cave, Frank, the leader of the expedition, tells Carl that he has received word a massive storm will hit the area in just a few days, and because of that, he has no choice but to call off the expedition. That is why, when Carl arrived, the crew was already busy hauling out all the equipment. Hearing this decision, Carl grows frustrated and orders Frank to stick with the plan to complete the mission of exploring every corner of the cave. For Carl, the money he has invested is far too great to let it all go to waste, and in the heat of the argument, even Josh gets scolded by Frank for failing to follow instructions to bring extra oxygen tanks.
Downhill ride that you can just party.
In short, Victoria cannot wait to arrive at the cave's entrance. She even thinks how terrifying it would be if heavy rain suddenly poured down, but Josh reassures her not to worry, because there is a rain shaman here. At this moment, Carl makes a bet on who can descend faster, and upon hearing that, Josh, with his strong stamina, feels confident.
Unbelievable. Amazing.
My ass.
Oh my god. Carl, eager to impress his girlfriend, boldly leaps into the mouth of the cave with a parachute, while at the same time, Frank and Judy prepare for their dive.
The cabin's measureless to man.
Traveling George, you with us?
Roger that.
A few moments later, after diving deeper, Frank notices a small hole hidden behind some rocks. Curious, he swims closer and discovers it might lead somewhere. The gap is so narrow that Frank has to take off his spare tank and tells Judy to wait. Still, Judy's curiosity gets the better of her, and she decides to follow.
Jesus, Frank. Let me break this stuff.
Suddenly, Judy panics as she gets stuck between the tight rocks. Seeing this, Frank quickly tells her to stay calm and not force her way through, warning her not to damage the diving gear.
It's cool, I got it.
Roger.
As soon as Judy manages to get through, both of them are left in awe after discovering a new passage that stretches wide, even though no one knows where it will lead.
Is there a bill up there? Wow.
Before continuing the exploration, Judy, who is already exhausted, asks Frank to turn back and prepare more carefully. However, just as Judy is about to return, suddenly,
got you. Frank, I found you.
Don't bail out. You get ready. We got a body ready, all right?
Because she had been forced earlier when she got stuck, Judy's oxygen hose actually suffered a leak. In the middle of the tension, Frank plans to share his oxygen with her, even though it is extremely risky.
We're gonna lose you both.
How unfortunate. Their hearts sink in shock as they watch Judy, panicked and desperate, drown, refusing to return Frank's oxygen supply. And all of this horror is witnessed by their teammates, helplessly watching through the camera feed. Shortly after, Josh grows furious when he sees the recording of Judy's death. He accuses Frank of being at fault, the man who let Judy die. Hearing this, George firmly reminds him that Judy chose her own path when she decided to follow Frank inside. In fact, Frank risked everything by sharing his oxygen with her, a truly heroic act. But Judy, overwhelmed by panic, tries to seize Frank's oxygen for herself. In the middle of their heated argument, Frank suddenly appears, demanding their help to lift Judy's lifeless body. A few moments later, without them realizing it, a violent storm rages outside the cave. Josh grows uneasy when the communication devices suddenly stop working. Worried about their safety, he urges his father to retire from this dangerous pursuit. To him, this expedition is not only a waste of time and money, but also a reckless gamble with their lives, especially since no one else even cares about this exploration.
On your big dream.
Better than anyone. Now maybe that didn't make any difference. Maybe it did.
Moments later, Frank ordered some of his team members to check the communication on the surface and at the same time escort Josh back, as he believes Josh doesn't belong down here. Hearing this, Luco volunteers to accompany Josh, who is still upset and fearful of what might happen. Meanwhile outside, the storm grows fiercer, completely unnoticed by those deep underground.
Check it out first thing in the morning.
On their way to the surface, they grow uneasy when a rumbling sound echoes around them. Something feels terribly wrong, and they rush to climb faster while Josh desperately tries to call Dex. Suddenly, panic strikes when they are told that a violent storm is raging outside the cave. And just as they are about to ascend, suddenly, in the middle of the dangerous situation, Josh, who can't leave his father behind, decides to go back with Luco. Meanwhile, on the other side, Frank tells Carl to get ready, as a violent storm is already raging on the surface. When Josh and Luco return, they quickly hand over a rope and urge Frank to climb up. But Frank insists that Victoria should go first. As the support rocks begin to shift, Josh warns Victoria to step aside, but she stubbornly forces her way up. Then disaster strikes. The passage suddenly collapses under massive boulders, and Luco falls hard against the rocks. Josh immediately rushes to save him. Unfortunately, Josh cannot pull Luco back from the raging current. In the middle of grief, Carl panics as the only exit is blocked by a massive boulder. With no other choice, Frank urges everyone to search for another way out. Before diving, Frank instructs them to gather as many flashlights and oxygen tanks as possible. He then asks Victoria to wear Judy's wetsuit to avoid hypothermia. But Victoria refuses, saying she would rather freeze than wear a suit from a dead body. Exhausted from arguing, Frank can only let her be. At that moment, Josh suddenly spots Luco, dragged back by a reverse current. After seeing Luco's condition, beyond saving, Frank tells everyone to step back. It becomes clear he intends to end Luco's suffering. With Luco's silent approval, Frank does what has to be done. Shortly before the dive, Frank instructs Victoria to stay at the very back, following the lead of the person in front, to minimize the risk if she suddenly experiences a panic attack. As they reach the small opening, Carl tries to encourage Victoria, urging her that she can do it. But unfortunately, as soon as they enter, Victoria panics badly when she gets stuck in the narrow crevice. Luckily, despite the struggle, she manages to get through the passage. Seeing Victoria exhausted, Frank decides it is time for everyone to head up to the surface of the cave. As Carl marvels at the vastness of the cave, Victoria finally feels the consequences of her stubbornness, suffering from hypothermia for refusing to wear the wetsuit. As if that is not enough, Frank insists that George use oxygen, since he is already affected by ailments from frequent dives. While waiting for Victoria and George to recover, Frank decides to pause the expedition and asks everyone to rest. In the end, Victoria regrets not following Frank's advice to wear Judy's wetsuit, but it is too late. She can only accept whatever fate awaits her. Although George's condition is extremely worrying, he still insists on continuing the journey, especially as the water in the cave begins to rise.
We follow the river.
During the journey, Josh grows worried when he sees George's condition, unaware that George is suffering from decompression sickness. However, George insists that he is only a little fatigued and tells Josh to go ahead while he follows as soon as possible.
Go.
Knowing his body can no longer keep up, and not wanting to be a burden, George decides to take a drastic action. A short while later, Frank, surprised to see Josh arriving alone, asks about George. Josh explains that George is resting for a moment. Feeling suspicious, Frank immediately rushes off to search for him. It turns out that George, not wanting to be a burden, decides to end his life in hiding, and gives his oxygen tank to the others who are still healthy so they can survive.
George, where are you? George, where are you?
In short, Frank then informs everyone that George has gone somewhere, leaving behind his flashlight and oxygen tank. Frank can also guess that George does not want to be a burden and has chosen to leave the group. Hearing this, Carl is shocked and feels pity, knowing George will likely die alone in darkness. Despite this, Frank has no choice but to urge everyone to continue the search for a way out. After traveling deep into the cave, they are now faced with a difficult challenge, a cliff with raging water below.
Make grinder down there.
In the midst of their confusion, they come up with the idea to create a crossing using ropes. Josh, feeling confident in his climbing skills, takes the lead in setting up the route. Once Josh establishes the rope crossing, they begin to cross one by one. When it is Victoria's turn, her hands cramp from the cold, causing her to lose focus and slip, her hair getting caught in the pulley. Unable to bear the pain, Victoria tries to cut her own hair with a knife, even as Frank struggles to stop her. In her desperate attempt, she ultimately falls and is swept away by the raging water, dying instantly. To make matters worse, their diving equipment is also carried away by the current. They are now all in confusion, as only one oxygen tank remains after the others sink along with Victoria. At that moment, Josh appears resigned, believing he will not survive. Seeing this, Frank tries to reassure his son, telling him that they will surely find a way out. Once they have calmed down enough, they, with little time to spare, continue their journey.
Let's keep moving.
Their progress is soon halted when the path ahead is found to be flooded, and with only one oxygen tank left, the situation grows more critical. In the midst of confusion, Frank asks everyone to take a short rest while they consider their next move. But barely have they rested when Josh panics, seeing Carl leave them both behind carrying their only remaining oxygen tank. Unfortunately, the cunning Carl manages to escape as Frank no longer has the strength to chase him, having run out of breath. Fortunately, Frank, who nearly drowned, manages to surface and tells Josh that Carl has gotten away.
Tunnel could choke.
Amid the confusion, Josh, unwilling to give up, becomes excited upon spotting bat droppings, an indication that this narrow crevice leads outside. Although the crevice is extremely tight, they have no choice but to try it.
I'm guessing the bats didn't swim down here. Ciko Recap.
Teach it to me. The state the pleasure don't decree.
After a difficult struggle by father and son, they finally manage to climb. However, while navigating the narrow cave, their flashlights run out of batteries. Although dimly, they see a faint light in the darkness. Upon following it, they finally reach an open area leading toward the surface. Unfortunately, even though the surface is in sight, they cannot climb up, it is too high and they have no equipment. Here, they also discover a Japanese tank stuck in the area, believed to be from World War II. That night, they take the initiative to make torches from the tank's remaining fuel to light the way, as they plan to search for another route because climbing this cliff was impossible. After walking for quite some time, they are delighted to find foaming water, indicating they are getting close to the sea. And at this spot, they also discover Carl's diving equipment. It turns out Carl ended up there after getting lost because his flashlight had run out of batteries. He admits feeling relieved to see Frank. Then, with a face showing no remorse, a hungry Carl even asks Josh for food.
You got any food?
While checking the surroundings, Frank is shocked to discover Victoria's body, carried here by the current. After taking a light stick from her, Frank urges Josh to continue the journey, ignoring Carl's nonsense, which leaves Carl visibly annoyed.
Josh, let's go. Well, fuck you, Frank!
A short while later, Josh, having dived to inspect the route, reports finding a tunnel that most likely leads to the sea. However, in a moment of carelessness, Carl angrily attacks Frank, intending to kill him. After Josh overpowers Carl, he immediately checks on his father and is shocked to find Frank struggling to breathe, his back impaled by a sharp rock. At this moment, Carl blames Frank, claiming that everyone who died did so because they followed his orders. Josh refutes this, explaining that their survival thus far is thanks to Frank's help. Hearing this, a regretful Carl has nothing more to say and decides to dive away without taking an oxygen tank. After Carl leaves, Frank, no longer able to endure the pain, asks Josh to end his suffering. Before that, he tells Josh that he is confident his son will be able to get out of the cave. Struggling with grief, Josh reluctantly fulfills his father's last wish. After helping his father pass away, Josh quickly moves on, before their torch goes out. While diving, Josh discovers that Carl has now died from running out of air. When the light stick goes out, Josh is lucky to still have a necklace modified into a flashlight. Unfortunately, his oxygen tank has run dry, forcing him to hold his breath as long as possible while trying to catch the last bits of air trapped in the cracks of the rocks. Finally, after that nerve-wracking journey that had us holding our breath, we can finally exhale, as Josh emerges from the cave, saved by the locals of Papua New Guinea. And just like that, the story reaches its end. Pretty intense, right? What began as an expedition turned into a tragic fight for survival, with explorers lost one after another to the cave's unforgiving waters. In the end, only Josh made it out, proof that courage and quick thinking can mean the difference between life and death. So here's a little advice: caves are dark, wet, and dangerous. Not exactly the best place for a casual stroll, unless, of course, we're talking about that man cave in your basement. Now that's a safer adventure. Thanks for watching, and see you again in the next recap.